This next-gen interview is brought to you by Lumosity. I'm happy to be joined by PJ Esteves, the design director on Ryse, Son of Rome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, yeah.
So I've just played some of the game. Yes, this is an action game. I haven't seen a QuickTime event happen in it. I want to talk about the first thing, which, as someone who's just come off playing Batman, Arkham Origins, where the block was on the Y. The block here is on the A. I can't think of a single game. I mean, that A button is supposed to be the most important thing you do.
Yep.
And in this game, it's the block.
Block is super important in our game, and it's because, like I was mentioning before, I mean, our AI, they swarm you a lot more than other games. So, your block and then the roll, the evade move we have is also really important to reposition to make sure, you don't get enemies that kind of try to jam you up and try to land multiple combo attacks on you.
And obviously you have your one attack that's on the X button.
Yep.
How do you sort of describe this combat? That's not at least a contemporary arrangement of not just on the button layout, but just sort of you usually have a heavy and a light attack.
Well, I mean, like on X, if you just press the X, tap it, then you do a quick attack, and then if you hold it, you do a heavy attack. And the same goes with your shield. So shield is kind of your push move. It's also your stun. So if I hit like Y, I tap it, then I do a quick one. But if I do a heavy one, then I can get like a longer stun on enemies.
Now I understand moments of awesome that I couldn't fully explain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you were doing some cool stuff there. I was impressed.
So, how have you, like, when you approached the game, and obviously you guys were under this kind of cloud that maybe it was just a QuickTime event game. What was kind of the approach to combat? I mean, there's almost been a cookie cutter approach to how a lot of these third-person action games have happened in the past years.
So, I mean, we'd never made a third-person action adventure before. We never made a combat game. So, I mean, we did have a lot of experts kind of help us kind of get over some of the early humps. But, I mean, we really wanted to try to do something different, and different in the sense of, it still felt like a combat game, games that you played before, but it had to have its own heartbeat, because there's no reason in copying someone else's combat game and doing it half as good as they do it. So we said, okay, we would definitely want to, we want to have these kind of Akira Kurosawa like feeling sections where the camera frames it a certain way, but how do we marry that with kind of this real kind of dynamic combat system?
And obviously it's really, having just come from Batman, I could notice the familiarity where you really are being encouraged to just really time out those blocks, time out those attacks, and just chain. Assuming I was a better player than I was in these instances, what benefits by staying in that persistent sort of combo loop? Where do you find yourself?
Well, so we have this thing where it's called Burning Eagle mode, right? So when you get your hit counter up to a certain level, or you land X amount of perfect strikes, then you kind of go into this mode where every hit you do gets them into an executable stun state. We played a lot of third-person combat games, and we kind of picked the best stuff we liked about each of them. We played a lot of God of War, a lot of Assassin's Creed, a lot of Batman. And the thing we liked the most about the Batman was the rhythm and the kind of fluidity of it. So we said, okay, we want to give the player maximum creativity, but obviously Assassin's Creed had the cool executions.
I mean, and it sounds like with that combo system that you can envision a lot of enemies happening towards the end of the game.
Yeah. So I mean, encounters. What we found is actually, it's not really about the amount of enemies you fight, it's more about the composition. So because I was mentioning our AI, we have these very specific attack patterns that are very dynamic and fluid. So, we did seriously tons of play testing, and in our game, it's a lot more fun to fight like specific enemies that are tailored to fight well together versus just having lots of numbers. We don't want to make this kind of like hack and slash where you got to hack through 100 guys. So you'll fight 6, maybe 8 in some scenarios. Interestingly enough, talking to kind of a lot of experts, they're like, no, like you can't do too much of that stuff because people won't like it. It'll be too hard for them. They really want like one enemy attacking, then one guy, And we're like, no, I think they're ready for multiple attackers.
Not everything has to be a kung fu movie.
Yeah, exactly. And, we joked about the conga line early on. It's like, it's like this guy hits you, then this guy, then this guy. And, obviously there's a little bit of that because the combat has to have a bit of ebb and flow. But, I mean, if the AI kind of get you surrounded, they will attack you multiple at a time where you cannot deflect. You can't use your shield. You have to roll out and kind of reset the kind of spacing of combat. So,
A whole other aspect of the game is visually is quite striking. I mean,
Yes.
You guys are Crytek, so anything short of that would have probably been more notable. In an interview I had yesterday with Phil Spencer, you know, there's a lot of talk about resolution and stuff like that out there. So you guys may not be at the full 1080p, yet it looks like that.
Our CEO Travat, he released kind of like a bit more of the technical reasons why, but I mean, the stuff that I like to mention is like I'm not like, you know, the Crytek tech guy, but it's really about art. At the end of the day, it's about doing something beautiful. And we had the game running at 1080 at 30, but we decided, well, we want to make it more beautiful. I mean, like, this isn't good enough for us, you know? And so if you look at, you know, kind of what we've done with Ryse is that even though it is 900, I mean, the amount of art fidelity you get in the world is just amazing. I mean, like, next gen to us is making something that absolutely looks gorgeous, you know? And especially, you know, you talk about having this kind of feeling of being in a battle, like we want to spend, you know, our tech on facial, we want to spend our tech on, you know, having a dynamic cloth. We want to, you know, we have this new rendering model for the new CryEngine for Xbox One, where we have, you know, this light that, you know, it reflects every material and it bounces off of each other. It's like, that's the stuff that's going to make it look next gen, not a difference of, you know, whatever, like 180, you know, resolution. And so it was definitely a choice. I mean, and, you know, we're Crytek. It could be a high-end PC. We're going to push it to the limits anyways.
The setting, Rome.
Yeah.
Why did you guys go in that direction? It's funny, you know, I think about Crytek, I think about the original Crysis, which really felt like kind of a very grounded real world until towards the end you start to realize the science fiction. But in the ensuing years, we've heaped, you know, on a lot more of the kind of fantastical elements. This seems, albeit probably not historically accurate.
Yes.
But does it stay grounded in a sense of kind of, I guess, recognizable reality or historical reality?
No, definitely. I mean, obviously, you know, God of War exists, right?
Yeah, it is without a might ask.
And they have that, you know, kind of like that Greek fantasy down. And it wasn't even like that they did it and we didn't want to do it. It was more along the lines of like, what's the story we want to tell? Mm-hmm. And we really wanted to focus on a person that felt real. You know, early on we said, you know, Marius is not a superhero. You know, he's a real legionnaire that kind of goes through this major traumatic event in his life, and he grows. And to really bring that to life, we said, okay, well, the world has to feel like, you know, Rome. We try to keep it fairly kind of grounded in reality. So.
All right, and obviously Ryse is a launch game for the Xbox One, and that's on November 22nd. I look forward to playing more. Let's take a moment to thank our sponsor, Lumosity. Lumosity makes brain training easy with fun and games based on neuroscience. They can help make any brain better by enhancing memory and attention. You can build custom training programs and get stats and summaries to track your progress and see where you need to improve. Over 40 million users have already experienced Lumosity's brain training, so go try it for yourself. You can get instant access and help support Rev3 Games by signing up at lumosity.com/Rev3Games.